Greetings everybody, this is Leviathan here, and today I want to do a video that discusses the Demon Hunter skills and the legendaries that accompany them. So in the Technical Alpha, we had a bunch of legendaries that dropped, but they're quite rare, so it was actually difficult to get all of them. The other thing to keep in mind too is that our stash space is very limited. I'm guessing that's just because of the alpha, but I do hope that some feedback to give is they give us just more stash space so that we can keep a lot of our items and have them for different setups and to test things out, because even if you wanted to test every single legendary in the game, you wouldn't be able to do so simultaneously. Like, you would have to lose some items to have space to just hold stuff. So that was a little unfortunate, because I would love to be able to just show you every single legendary in my inventory, but I don't have that. But what I did do was keep track of all the different legendaries that I found and also that I saw on other players. Sorry for the flashbang here. So this is what, as far as I could tell, were all the legendaries available to the Demon Hunter in the game for Technical Alpha. And there probably will be more, because you can see there are quite a few empty slots, and I'll put a link to this in the video description, so if you'd like to look at this for yourself, then that will be there. And as we get more items and stuff, I'll update them. There probably is also a better way to display this, because some slots actually have multiple legendaries, and that might not be obvious from looking at this, the way I've set it up. But I just wanted some basic way to show you all the different powers and stuff. So what I'd like to do in this video is show you each skill, and it'll be in its unmodified format, and then we'll discuss the legendaries for it, and also just how I kind of found the skill, because I eventually tried every skill, and most, if not all, of the legendaries as well. And some of them perform really well, and some of them are like, a little lackluster. So without further ado, let's unblind you for now. We'll pop back and forth through this. But first, let's look at just the skill menu in general. So that's here. And then you can see all your skills are here on the left. And they rank up automatically. So just as you level up while you're doing the main story mode and eventually just trying to get to your max level through doing dungeons and such, your skills will level up. And we've been told that there will be 2 additional skills for each class once the game expands to get everybody to the true max level, which is 60. But for Alpha, the max was 45, and we were missing 2 skills. There may even be more skills that they'll add as well. And we know for certain they will add more legendaries to modify those skills. And that's sort of the marriage between those, is that the legendaries in Diablo Immortal function quite differently from previous games, in that they are almost like the rune system from D3, where you're going to get specific legendaries that modify the specific behavior and capacity of your skills. It actually works out really nicely. They feel super impactful. They feel very like exciting. You want to find these legendaries and you want to try these powers out, because you almost end up building yourself around what you find rather than having like a build plan, especially because of how rare they are. In any case, the most boring stuff is what we'll start with. You have crossbow shot, which is just a typical generator. And then you also have explosive arrow, which is a little bit better because it has some AoE to it. The nice thing about crossbow shot, though, is that you can fire it and still keep moving at the same time. Both of these have ultimates. So basically what happens is that as you shoot your primary attack, the bar is being generated. You can kind of see it here at the bottom right. There's like a little red bar next to the primary, which is this button here. And as that button fills, it'll charge your ultimate. You can see I actually have the ultimate charged right now for explosive shot. So this is what explosive shot looks like. When it hits a target, it eventually explodes and does some AoE at that explosion. If I go into the ultimate, she announces that and she pops off. And now you can see the timer is draining, and I'm shooting these gigantic bolas. And it just like super modifies our regular attack. So that can be a nice way to get some damage out. Save that for a boss or something you want to really DPS, hit a DPS window, things like that. And so you can see now we've drained out our bar on the ultimate. If I swap over to show you crossbow shot, put it right there, then you can kind of see the same mechanic I was talking about. You see we're actually moving while firing crossbow shot. So that's pretty cool. You do slow down your movement, so you can see if I stop shooting it, I move a lot faster. If I'm shooting it, I move slower, but I'm actually still attacking. Another thing to keep in mind with the way that combat works in this game is that you auto-acquire your targets. So for any skill that doesn't have its own like aiming reticle or anything like that. The game is going to try to smartly acquire a target that's like close to you. So kind of depending on how you face your character is the target that you'll pick up. And you'll get used to that nuance. It can be kind of weird to play around at first, but eventually you'll figure out like, oh, if I kind of face my character a certain way, then I will always hit the target that I want to hit. And as far as the legendaries for both of these primaries, there are only 2, and they're both in the main and the offhand. So for crossbow shot, you get the Hunger, which makes it pierce through enemies and strike additional ones. That can be cool, just to give it a bit more damage potential, because otherwise it just hits the one enemy and stops. And then for explosive shot, it adds DOT, so it gives it some burn damage for damage over time. I didn't really mess around with either of these because it's your primary attack, so it's kind of a low... it is a low priority for buffing it up. You do use your primary attack a lot, but they're just going to be harder hitting skills that you probably want to buff instead. And the offhand slot is a little contested. There is an item that we'll get to later on that is by far the best in slot, in my opinion, in that slot. So the next, if we come back to the game, we've got Daring Swing. Daring Swing is a cool skill. I'll put it in that slot. So as you can see, it's like a dash movement skill. It allows you to do a grappling hook, and it actually does deal some damage, but the damage isn't really the main part of it. The main part of what you're trying to do with it is reposition yourself. It's nothing like Vault, because it doesn't like move you super quickly, really. Kind of takes some time to do the animation, but it is pretty cool. So if we show you that, you can aim it in any direction that you want. So you hold the skill down and you kind of get this aiming circle. And then if you point it in the direction, you'll do the grappling hook and finish the animation. Very cool flair to it, very cool looking skill. The issue is that there's some collision stuff, so like if I try to like aim past this pillar, right, I just get stuck. So I can't like really daring swing over things, or if this is here, like I would love to be able to daring swing over that, but no, collision. So it gets really iffy, like when you're in kind of tight spots. You can think you're about to go somewhere, and then you just get stuck and enemies are right on top of you. So for that reason, I've never been a big fan of this skill, and I didn't use it that much at all. Pardon me. There are a couple of legendaries for it as well. In the helm, in the head, you get one item that gives you an increase in the charges, so you can just use it more. In the shoulders, it lets you fire icy arrows that then make a path of chilling. So if you wanted to CC the enemy, slow them down a little bit more, you could do that. I believe those are the only 2. That is correct. So we'll go ahead and move on back to Knife Trap, which is coming up next. Whoops, what is this? Knife Trap. So Knife Trap, I wasn't a big fan of this skill either. It is what it sounds like. You place a trap on the ground, and then it arms. Then when enemies walk over it, it'll do like a big AoE. And as you can see, you can have a bunch of charges. So you can place a trap there, trap there, trap there. You can see the little arming time. And then now these are all armed. When enemies would walk over them, they would like take a little bit of a second or so, and then boom, pop. So you can get some AoE out of it. One thing, if you notice that it was saying in the skill text, is that they don't overlap. They can't be placed to overlap each other. So you do want to spread them out when you're placing them. Oh, actually, I already have my max traps placed too. Oh, there we go. So that you can see if I place a new one, it gets rid of an old one, and I can't place one over top of another one. So it has to be in a specifically different spot. That's some of the mechanics behind it. Again, not a big fan of them, but okay if you like traps. And then there are a few legendaries for it as well. So in the chest, there's 2. There's one that makes the arming time reduced, and then there's one that increases the damage. In the shoulders, you can increase the number of maximum ones you have active by 2, so then that would mean you'd be able to have up to 5 active. And then for the legs, it becomes a frost trap, and that lets it do cold damage, or sorry, chill enemies when it explodes. So again, being able to crowd control a little bit with Knife Trap. It's alright. The next skill on the list is the knockback shot. This is another skill that I didn't use much. These skills are the ones that unlock early, so it almost feels like you kind of use them initially and then you're done with them. So let's equip this. Knockback shot. It's okay. It does what it says. It knocks the enemies back, so you can kind of use it as a crowd control. You can see it knocks them back and stuns them for a few seconds. 4 seconds, actually a decent amount of time. It has a pretty big radius as well too. You can see the receptacle or the reticle, however you pronounce that thing. That shows you exactly what the radius will be. So if I shoot that off, then that's any enemies caught in that would be knocked back. And you can see there's a pretty solid cooldown on it as well. So it's sort of like a use it wisely thing to control the enemies and push them back. Again, not a big fan of that one. There are a couple of legendaries for it as well. There's the chest here that makes it a cold one. And so then when you knock them back, they'll be stunned. And then if they try to approach you, maybe through that same zone, then they'll be walking through a cold path and slowed down. And actually I just realized that is the only one for that one. So this chest actually dropped a lot too for me. I do believe that the legendaries are on a weight system, so some are more common than others. There was a chest that we'll get to later that it took me literally almost my entire time playing alpha to find, whereas some of them I found all the time. That knockback chest one is definitely one I found a lot. Next is one of my absolutely most used skills, which is multi-shot. Multi-shot is amazing. So I already have it equipped, but I'll just hover over it so you can see. Multi-shot has 3 charges to it, and it just deals some damage in an AoE cone. And what's cool about the way this game works is if you have any like things that modify the skill, you'll be able to see them here. So you can see here, my multi-shot damage is increased by 10%. And it tells me the source. It's coming from a legendary power on my helm. And so if I actually were to equip another item that I use for multi-shot, which is my weapon, this weapon makes it do a flaming arrow, and it just gives it a burn DOT. Then if we go back to multi-shot in the skill menu, then you can now see it's also being modified by that. So I get the inscription there, and it shows you that it increases the damage and everything too. So it's actually really well done in terms of letting you know, here's what you're going to get now for the burn, here's the initial damage that it does, like all the updates to the item. So again, it's a charged skill. It also has cooldown to it too. So you get to hold 3 charges, and it has cooldown for 9 seconds. So you can see a pretty solid receptacle. And then if I shoot it off, there it is. That's what it looks like with the flaming arrow. The reason I had unequipped it was so you could see what it would look like just naturally. So here's the natural. So a little less fiery. And if you have the multiple charges, the game is actually quite quick with combat, so you can actually fire them off in quick succession. I'll let it get to 2 charges just so I can show you that. But you can really like layer out some heavy DPS in a matter of seconds. So I have 2 charges now, right? I can just go bang bang, and those charges are used up very quickly. As you already saw, a few legendaries for multi-shot as well. So in the helm there are 2. I've been using the damage increase one by 10%. That's Cowl of Absolute Punishment, but there's also the Cowl of Focused Hatred, which gives it 4 additional arrows. So it makes the spread of the cone even wider. Essentially almost turns it into the multi-shot that you see in D3. That allows it to really just clear the whole screen. And then the other one here is multi-shot, getting that burning damage application. So really, really strong in the alpha, like one of the best skills in my opinion. If we come back, next up you can see is Rain of Vengeance on the list. Let's go ahead and pop that on. I was using Rain of Vengeance early. It's actually a pretty good skill. I only swapped away from it just because there were other skills that I prioritized over it. But Rain of Vengeance actually has a lot of powers to it, and it's very good damage. So you got Rain of Vengeance. It does damage over time in an area. You can see there with the description, and it's a pretty solid cooldown. That's maybe one of the things that kind of hurts it, is that it has a long cooldown. So here's the natural Rain of Vengeance, quite a big circle, right? So you can kind of just pick where you're going to throw that out, and then it'll rain down for 4 seconds. So you kind of want all your enemies in here while you do other damage to them. Again, very strong skill. You can change the behavior of it quite a bit with some of the legendaries. So some of the ones that I was using early, for instance, were like this Shoulders, Bombardier's Toll. Changes Rain of Vengeance to summon the bomb-dropping Shadow Beast that damage and stun enemies. That you might know that from D3. It'll turn it into sort of like a dive-bombing beast thing. And it changes the cone of, instead of that circular thing that you just saw, it changes it to more of that sort of narrow hallway cone that you've seen on some of the other skills. And then the other shoulders here give it a chill. So you can go for another slow mechanic with that. So you can actually use it as more of like a zoning slow down mechanic. And you can also have a damage increase with a bow main hand called Dreadlands Requital. So those are the available legendaries for it. But again, it's a pretty good skill. I've seen some people using it, but I just didn't have space for it personally, so I ended up taking it out of my rotation. Next on the list is Sentry. Sentry is a lovely, lovely skill. It's going to be impossible to really show you Sentry properly because there are no enemies around. But if you watch a lot of my gameplay on my channel, you'll have seen Sentries in work because I use them all the time. So just to show you the written description of Sentry. Here is what it does. It is 30 seconds of duration, and it fires at nearby enemies 850 damage per shot, and you can have up to 2 at one time, and you get 2 charges of them. So basically, I have my 2 charges. I can lay down a sentry anywhere within this circle. So I'll lay one there. Whoops, I hit the wrong button. That's a little preview. And I lay one here. And so now I just have these sentries out for 30 seconds. You can see they also have health bars. So they will persist for the 30 seconds if they don't die. But their health bars make it so that enemies can't attack them, and AoE attacks and all sorts of stuff can take them down. And they can be pretty frail at high tiers of Challenge Rift and things like that. So you want to place them in spots where hopefully they won't get destroyed. And as you can see, the cooldown for them is such that they'll come back before the duration is done. So you can kind of replace them before they expire. But they fire like turrets. Like, they have some solid attack speed to them. They do good damage. It's just passive damage that you don't have to worry about. They'll auto target. They also pull insane aggro. Enemies will go for these before they go for you, so you can actually, like, you know, stand back here, be peppering an enemy with your primary shot, put a sentry like right in front of you, and they'll go for that sentry. You can stand here and just basically attack the enemy until that sentry dies, like, freely. They will just go for the sentry. So it's both a burden and a curse, because they'll go for the sentry, which is great, but at the same time, if they take it out, then you're losing that sort of free DPS from the sentry. There are quite a few legendaries for sentry as well. A lot of them are really good. So for the helm slot, you have one that's Yassil's Contained Destruction. It'll make your sentry fire a mortar, and that explodes to damage all enemies in the area, so it gives it more of an AoE. For the most part, in their normal form, they're just single target. You'll also have a frozen sentry. So this would give them the chilling effect again to slow enemies down. I feel like both of those can be good, but the biggest issue with sentries is, again, in higher tier content, they just don't survive for very long. So if you were trying to get utility out of them or like major damage, then you can't rely on them, because they'll just get like 1 or 2 shot, and then there goes all that damage. So I usually just take sentries as a distracting mechanic in high tier challenge rifts. Like, I put them so I can do more kiting as the enemy like gets distracted by them for even a second. It gives me some space to make separation. And then against bosses, if you actually put them in solid spots, they'll stay alive, because the boss will try to attack you, or it can only attack one sentry at a time, because it's now a single, like a one-on-one fight situation, and you'll just get free fire on at least one of your sentries going off. So it can be really great. And then we have 2 other sentry items as well. Wow, actually 3 more. Jeez, I forgot there's so many. So in the main hand, there's Vigilance, which gives your sentry a chance to launch rockets every 2 attacks. So that just gives it some additional damage. And then there's also a Watcher Salvation item that gives you an increase in the number of max sentries. And then in the offhand, you can increase your sentry damage. So, you know, you can really modify your sentries quite a bit if you take like 3 items. That's 3 out of your 6 legendaries all going towards sentry if you want it to become just a pure sentry god. But again, probably limited application for that. However, it is a thing. That's one of the, so far, that's one of the skills we've seen with the most legendary modifiers. Next on the list is Smokescreen. A little less exciting, you would think, but you can do a lot of cool things to and with Smokescreen. So Smokescreen, I think, is going to be a really good like PvP skill, because it does what you think it does, which is essentially creates a shroud, makes you hard to find. So you create a thick smoke, and it conceals you and your nearby allied party members, that's huge to note, for 2.5 seconds. Major. So in a PvP scenario, you throw this out, there it is. and that's a pretty good shroud, right? And if I don't move, it keeps that shroud for that 2.5 seconds. However, as soon as I moved, I unshrouded myself basically. But again, if I don't activate it, you can see, look at this radius. It's pretty good, right? So if I had a party member like right here, boom, we're both shrouded. And now we're back. So that's really good. And obviously a bit of a longer cooldown on that, but if it had any shorter of a cooldown, it would be super OP. Now the fun begins if we look at the legendaries, because you can turn smokescreen into an offensive item or an offensive skill. So the first one that we'll discuss though is the chest, which just makes the effect even thicker, longer lasting smoke. And you maintain your concealment while you're in it. So you can see that it persisted for long, but we eventually came out of it. But you can stay in the smoke and stay concealed. This is gonna be like insane for PvP. However, when you attack, you will be visible. So the enemy will be able to see you as you get your attacks off. But if you wanna just like stay still, like no one move, then you will be concealed. So it's pretty sick for that. In the leg slot, this is where it gets pretty interesting. So there's two of them here. One makes you get a gas bomb for your smoke screen. And you will throw that and then damage all nearby enemies. That's pretty exciting because you can just turn it into damage. So say you don't want a defensive skill, this will give you a damage over time, make a gas bomb. And then for Jane's Silent Retribution, all your attacks will be critical hits for a few seconds after smokescreen's concealment ends. So you basically go into smokescreen and you kind of use it as a buff for offense, and now you can do additional attacks. I'm definitely noticing that I'm missing one because there is another item that makes your smokescreen throw a grenade. I actually got that item really early, but I don't see it here on my list. So I will append in the video description or in a comment below the video, like a pinned comment, what the other smokescreen item is, because I'm noticing I'm missing that. And that's sort of one of the side effects of testing the alpha and the super low drop rate of legendaries, and also the fact that we can't stock all the legendaries. My list certainly is incomplete here. Just with that one, I'm pretty sure I got all the rest though, but if I did miss any, again, I will definitely update the video, either in the video description or a comment to let you guys know. This will be sort of like a living thing, and I'm sure we'll do it again when the other skills get in, and also they add way more legendaries. So to keep this going though, next up on the list is Spinning Chakram, one of my favorite skills. I actually didn't like this skill at all when I first started playing. I equipped it and I was like, I see why this is cool, but this is going to be so hard to play around. But it's actually a really, really sick skill. So the initial thing with Chakram is that it launches a Spinning Chakram, and it deals damage to all enemies in its path, and then it deals damage on the return path. So you have two opportunities to hit with it. And the thing that's a really sick mechanic is if you catch Chakram, then the cooldown of Chakram gets reset. But you can only do it 3 times every 12 seconds. So basically you can pop off, throw a Chakram, catch it, throw it, catch it, throw it, catch it. You can have this cool pattern of really going off on an enemy. Or enemies, if you can line the Chakram shots up properly. And there's so many cool items that do things to Chakram. One of the things that we have equipped right now is that enemies that get hit by Chakram get a 4% additional damage within a short time. And it can stack up to 5 times, so you can just keep popping hits on them and just doing tons of damage. So, just to showcase what this looks like, you get Chakram, hold it down, get the ability to aim it wherever you want. So say there's a bunch of enemies, say this bench over here is an enemy, it looked at me weird. Throw a Chakram, boom, and then it comes back. And the cool thing about it is I think the Chakram tries to smartly find you on its return. So if I'm moving when I throw this, let's throw it here at the bench again, and I move down, it's gonna now point down. It tries to predict that I'm going down, and it'll make it so that it makes it a little easier for me to make that catch and get the cooldown again. So if I throw it back here again, but move up, then it's gonna point up this way, and then bang, caught it. So this is actually a really sick skill because there's some prediction to it. You kind of have to understand your own pathing of how you're gonna like play around it. It can definitely it can debate you a bit too, because it can pull you into scenarios where you're gonna go for a catch and you're gonna wish that you weren't standing in that spot anymore, because now there's a bunch of enemies or like some projectiles coming to that same spot. So you might also want to give up on a catch. It's like, never mind, there's enemies there, just let it go. And then you still, will have to deal with the cooldown of this skill, but it comes back, So there's definitely some opportunity cost. some opportunity improvement. Like, there's just tons of cool things to do with chakram, so that's amazing. And that's just the base of the skill. And then we have some legendaries for it too. This was by far my favorite skill in the alpha. So here you can get an additional charge of it on shoulders. So that just gives you a little more room to work with if you're still sticking with just the normal throw. If you don't catch it, you have a second charge to then also pop off and then start to try to catch that one and keep the chain going. So that makes your life a little easier to deal with the chakra mechanics. And then, like I had mentioned before, we have the pants that give you the additional damage for multiple chakram hits in a quick succession. So this can definitely make your chakram damage go up quite a bit, and it's already a very hard-hitting skill for the Demon Hunter. And then this offhand, it took me forever to find this. Pez found it really early in the alpha, and then he made fun of me because I didn't find it for a long time. This is probably the strongest offhand in the game, and maybe even the strongest legendary item in the game for Demon Hunters right now. So it makes your chakram orbit you, and it'll orbit multiple times and be able to hit the same spot. And this is so good, in fact. You've probably seen it from some of my previous videos, but I want to showcase it here in the skill video because it's just that good. So if I equip the offhand here, you'll be able to see the new mechanic now. Chakram, bang. We'll just rotate around. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 hits, right? We're looking at that pillar. We're looking at this pillar right here. And so the way to know where it's going to hit is it goes to the edge of the radius here. So when I hold this down, you can kind of see where the behavior will be. So I want to basically put the pillar that I'm facing here on the left right in that cross section. And then the chakram goes out, and there we go. 1 hit, 2 hit, 3 hit, 4 hits. And that's off of 1 chakram. And it also like stays out for so long that it basically makes the cooldown of it feel like less because the chakram is out, but the cooldown starts immediately after it goes out. So you already have one out, and then you're just like waiting for it. And you can move around. This orbits you. So as you're like kiting enemies, you can move the chakram around to kind of get a better, like I want to hit them here, I want to hit them here, I'm moving, I'm kiting, I'm hitting them here. So you can really guide it. And once you get like, it's a cool skill cap skill because once you get like really good at reading the battlefield and moving around with the DH, you can do all sorts of really cool stuff with chakram. Can't speak more highly of that skill. One of my favorites. I guess we have to move on though. So the next skill, we're almost done here, is Strafe. And then Strafe is kind of cool. It's the one channeling skill that the Demon Hunter has. I used it early and then I eventually switched away from it. So it does reduce your movement speed, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't like it as much, is because when you're trying to kite enemies and survive, any reduction in movement speed is basically a death sentence. And Demon Hunter already kind of feels like a slow moving class, at least in farming in particular compared to some of the other classes. So anything that reduces your speed, I'm just not a fan of in the game. There's a very short cooldown, but that's because the way that this skill works is it's kind of got its own resource to it. And I'll show you what that means in a second. It consumes energy, and then you recover it when you're not strafing. So how that looks is you hold down the strafe button, and now I'm in strafe, and you can see the bar below me drains out, right, over time. And now I can no longer strafe once that bar is done. You can see as the skill is on our bar, there's a little thing around it that's recharging. And so now strafe is fully charged again. So I could do a full duration strafe again. If I let it go, you can see I only used up half of it. So now the bar is like halfway and it's already recharging. And I can even just tap it too. I can go tap, tap. There's a short cooldown so you can't just like spam it. And so you can kind of go like I don't know why you would ever want that behavior of just like taps of strafe. But basically you are going to play around it where you do like a full strafe and then you're done. And then you're going to use some of your other skills while you wait for strafe to come back and then strafe again. Or, you know, throw a primary attack in there. So that's kind of the behavior around strafe. Solid skill. There's actually a lot of legendaries for it too. So I could see it being pretty strong. But maybe if like there were party members or something else. Because you're going to get eaten alive while you're strafing. But if enemies, or if party members are there to like take enemies off of you or be distractions, then you could probably strafe nearby and do some good damage. So there's a chest that increases the damage of it by 10%. There is a main hand, 2 of them in fact, that give you some extra behaviors. Strafe will launch homing rockets, which is nice because they will literally home. They will find targets. All the rockets auto-target for the DH. And add damage. This increases the duration of strafe so that if you wanted to strafe for much longer, you could. And then the offhand instead allows you to throw grenades, and that gives you like more AoE component to your strafe, which is already a pretty AoE skill, but this makes it even better. So you could do like a nice combination of basically increasing the damage of strafe, throwing out grenades, and then having a long strafe duration, or also the rockets as well, just to make it even more powerful. So definitely another skill that they put a lot of thought into as far as legendaries to buff it up. And last but not least is Vengeance. It's not a very interesting skill because, as you can imagine, it's a buff basically. It's a state you go into, similar to Diablo 3. So there's two components to this, however. And there is one thing here that's very strong, and I'll talk about it in a second. So the active part of this is that you go into Vengeance for 6 seconds, and it modifies your primary attack to launch additional shots for additional damage. So if you're going to be a Demon Hunter style of play that is relying on your primary attack quite a bit, then you're going to love having Vengeance, actually put on the bar, so that you can get even more out of your primary attack. I actually use Vengeance a lot, but not for that. Oops, not strafe, Vengeance. And you're probably thinking to yourself, well, what do you mean? The passive part of Vengeance, 3% increased movement speed for each nearby enemy, and it stacks up to 10 times. Now, it doesn't tell you what the radius is for enemies to get that bonus, but it seems pretty generous. Like when you're kiting enemies, you will notice that you're moving significantly quicker when you have enemies nearby. And I didn't really talk about this much because I feel like it's an advantage of Vengeance that people don't really know about, but it's super huge for the playstyle that I was using for Demon Hunter, which is the kite playstyle. When you activate Vengeance, you do get this 6 seconds of, all right, look, my primary skills are doing more than usual. Now I'm getting all those extra hits out of it, and then boom, it goes back to just the singular hit. But the passive, which I can't showcase for you properly here without enemies, you'll see it in a lot of the challenge rift videos and things that are on the channel though, just makes it so that you can run way faster, and it's 3%, and you can get 10 stacks. That's 30% increased movement speed out of Vengeance, and that just can't be understated. It's always available to you when there are enemies nearby. So 2 applications. One, in challenge rifts, when you're kiting a bunch of enemies, you can kite way more effectively because you'll be able to like just zoom around a lot more and not get caught up to by enemies, especially slower ones. And then 2, when you're doing speed farming and you're in the world, it doesn't work quite as well because usually you're killing everything like in front of you. That's kind of how range works. It's like you'll, kill some enemies and then be running forward, and now there's no enemies to get movement speed off of because you already killed what's in front of you. But if you're just trying to get to an objective, you can actually leave enemies up and get movement speed from them as you're running towards whatever objective that you're trying to get to before it times out or before an event disappears or something like that. So you can think of it as like a movement speed boost, but the penalty is that you'll have to leave enemies behind, and that could be like EXP or drops or things that you would want. So that's why I kind of wish that there was more movement speed for the DH. I suppose in this video we can also talk about the consumable for the Demon Hunter, which is the tracking kit. And you get these from doing events like the Haunted Carriage in Ashwold Cemetery. You get it from the tax collector at the end, killing him. You also get it from completing your bestiary. You get 3 of them per day. You can unlock 3 bestiary pages. And even if you don't unlock a page, if you get a duplicate, you still get a tracking kit. And when you use it, you can get 10% additional movement speed for 20 minutes. And also applies to allies, but you also lose it if you die. So in higher tier challenge rifts, like it's not a guarantee that you'll have this all the time. But it is noticeable. You'll actually notice that you have the 10% moving a little faster, and when it wears off, you'll be like, oh, I definitely ran out. So you want to reapply that. Oh, and I'm so silly, I forgot to show you guys the Vengeance legendaries. Sorry about that. So for Vengeance, we have Vision of the Lost as a helm. There's actually quite a few here. So during Vengeance, each defeated enemy increases its duration by 0.2 seconds up to that should say maximum of 2.4 seconds. Hate spelling mistakes. So that basically means that it lowers the cooldown in effect as you're using Vengeance to kill enemies, because you'll be in it for longer, so the cooldown will seem a bit shorter. I never really use this because I think they're just better helm powers to use, but if you wanted to go fully kitted into Vengeance, this would definitely help you get more out of it. This makes the cooldown of Vengeance go down altogether. This chest I think is like super weighted and very hard to get, because I only got probably like 6 of them throughout the course of Alpha, and I played a lot. And I didn't even get one of them originally until like 2 weeks into Alpha. So it took a long time to get this sucker. but it can be good because it's a 15% reduction on a 20-second cooldown skill, so that's 3 seconds off. So now it's 17 seconds and a 6-second duration, so now it's 11 seconds. So basically you cut the time in half when all is said and done. And then of course if you get this duration increase, if you're killing enemies pretty easily, while in Vengeance then even more so. These pants are actually really good. So Cough's Unrelenting Fury means that, or gives you that during Vengeance, your primary attack launches 2 rockets that deal 1108 damage to nearby target. So basically, it's super modifying if you are a primary attack user for your DH, because in Vengeance, you're getting the additional shots to your primary attack, and if you're using these pants, you're now also launching rockets. So Vengeance, like, uptime means that you just turn into like a super god of primary attack, and you can do a significant amount of damage during that window. So I was using these quite a bit until I switched to the chakram pants, where I couldn't like stand still to primary attack long enough in the high tier challenge rifts. So it just became about throwing the chakrams out and running around, basically peppering in some primary attacks here and there, but certainly it not being the main gist of our damage anymore. So that is the overview of all the Demon Hunter skills and legendaries. Definitely a long video, but hey, a lot of skills and a lot of legendaries to talk about. Like I mentioned at the outset, there will be more. There are going to be at least 2 more skills, definitely a lot more legendaries. You can see plenty of empty squares there. I don't know if there will be a legendary for every placement for every skill. That would seem kind of crazy, but hey, maybe they could do that. I mean, they're going to add more to this game, so you never know. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about all the different skills, about the Demon Hunter in general. I think it's a really strong class. I don't think it's overpowered, like a lot of people have been saying. I think it's just really good. And I think that it's in a great spot. The only weakness I would say is that I wish it had more ways to go faster, because that's kind of one of the hallmarks of it from Diablo 3, and it's not like the DH of Immortal has to be the same as the DH of D3, but I wouldn't mind if it just had, like, you know, after you cast a multi-shot or something, you move faster. Like, it could be on a skill activation instead of just pure, like, a movement speed skill or like a Volt or something. Or Daring Swing, you know, if they wanted to actually make us use it, they could make it better, just have a legendary for that. That makes it so after you Daring Swing, you get a movement speed increase or something. In any case, definitely hop into the comments. Let me know what you think about DH, skills, legendaries, all that good stuff. Thank you for watching this one. There will be timestamps, all that good stuff, so you can check it all out. Probably should have said at the top instead of the end. But thanks for watching this video. We'll catch you in the next one. Adios for now.